I had a job, I had a partner, I had a house, I had everything, I was happy. And do you think now I'm happy? Living like this?
Yeah, no one
being
wants
dirty?
to be.
Come on, man, this is a joke, you know.
The agony of homelessness in America runs deeper than appearances, a hidden wound pulsing within our cities and hearts.
To be honest, if I don't give them what they want, I get bullied.
Oh, they bully you.
Like the man at Lidl's is done nothing but sits there and he stares at me.
People without shelter face not only the biting chill of the streets, but the crushing isolation of being overlooked, their lives marked by the merciless grip of the fentanyl epidemic.
I'm passionate about cooking, I'm passionate about painting, music, getting to know people. Like, I'm so sad because I feel like a lot of people out here are just not, I feel like I'm still a human being. I have so much emotions and feelings, and I feel like people walk around here so numb, and it hurts me. I want to save everybody. I can't save myself. Like, nobody, if they don't live this life, they don't understand how hard this shit is. And no matter how hard it is, you have to pretend like you're okay.
Yeah, right.
And just keep going.
This documentary exposes the unfiltered anguish of those ensnared in this calamity and the heavy burden it places on society. How can we ignore such profound suffering? Walk with us as we uncover the deep impact this crisis leaves on the nation's soul. The economic scars of homelessness. Homelessness in America leaves a deep financial wound, one that weaves through the core of cities and communities, etching marks that last for generations. In urban hubs like Los Angeles, taxpayers shoulder a staggering $1 billion each year to maintain temporary shelters, cover emergency medical costs, and support fragmented social initiatives. Yet despite these massive outlays, the root causes of homelessness remain largely ignored, allowing the issue to escalate and deteriorate with time. For people living unhoused, the lack of a stable address becomes an overwhelming obstacle to finding steady work. Without a permanent place to live, building a foundation for stability is nearly impossible, whether applying for employment, receiving mail, or accessing vital services. This instability traps individuals in a relentless poverty, turning the dream of upward mobility into something out of reach. Additionally, many unhoused people struggle with mental health conditions or substance use disorders, further straining their ability to actively participate in the economy. People who could contribute valuable talents and labor are instead pushed to the margins, ensnared by a system that overlooks their potential. The financial consequences extend across entire communities. In neighborhoods like Skid Row and San Francisco's Tenderloin, the visible crisis casts a lingering shadow over economic life. As homelessness endures, local merchants see customer traffic shrink dramatically, leading to sharp revenue declines. Eventually, business shutdowns become frequent, and the sense of community begins to fade away. Property prices in these areas drop as would-be homeowners and renters turn away from neighborhoods marked by suffering, amplifying the downward economic spiral. The question lingers, why do we stand by as these once vibrant districts deteriorate under neglect and inertia? The hidden expenses of homelessness are equally enormous. Billions flow into emergency medical care for preventable conditions, law enforcement responses to minor survival-related offenses, and extensive cleanup of informal encampments. These are not just line items on a budget. They represent a collective failure to provide essential support. Each dollar poured into short-term measures is a lost chance to fund durable strategies like affordable housing, workforce development, and accessible addiction treatment that can end homelessness permanently. Neglecting these foundational issues is more than an economic lapse. It's a shared weight that weakens the broader promise of prosperity. The devastating grip of fentanyl on homeless communities. Although the financial burden of homelessness is immense, it is intensified by a sweeping catastrophe, the fentanyl epidemic. The link between homelessness and substance use is unmistakable, with fentanyl becoming the most destructive element in this heartbreaking cycle. In 2024, fentanyl accounted for more than 70% of overdose fatalities, with the homeless population suffering the greatest losses. For countless individuals, the brutality of life on the streets drives them toward drug use as a form of escape. However, the very escape they pursue frequently traps them in relentless dependence, making recovery seem painfully out of reach. Fentanyl's extreme strength and easy availability only worsen the crisis. Inexpensive to manufacture and frequently mixed into other drugs, it ensnares vulnerable people with alarming speed. Its impact on homeless communities is catastrophic. In San Francisco alone, more than 800 overdose deaths were recorded in a single year, most linked to fentanyl. These figures are far more than statistics. They signify stolen lives, broken families, and neighborhoods engulfed in grief. The gripping documentary Fentanyl's Shadow powerfully portrays this epidemic, chronicling the lives of unhoused individuals and revealing the harrowing toll of fentanyl dependency. But the repercussions extend beyond those directly affected. The shockwaves of fentanyl abuse drain public systems, overwhelming hospitals, with overdose emergencies and straining law enforcement resources. Fentanyl also drives criminal activity in homeless encampments where addiction and desperation fuel petty theft, shoplifting, trafficking, and vandalism as people fight to survive. This heightens tensions in communities already struggling with homelessness, undermining both trust and public safety. Still, the most devastating consequence of fentanyl lies not only in individual pain, but in how it blocks any pathway to reintegration. Addiction isolates individuals, cutting them off from the support they need to rebuild their futures. Fentanyl's hold deepens the gulf between the homeless and society at large, leaving those most in need to endure in silence, perpetuating the spiral of despair. Health and public health consequences of homelessness. The health emergency engulfing America's homeless population is a quiet catastrophe, intensifying their hardship while overwhelming public health infrastructure. Lacking shelter to protect them, unhoused individuals endure constant exposure to extreme conditions, bitter winters, blistering summers, and relentless storms. In these harsh environments, frostbite, heat stroke, and respiratory diseases thrive, transforming manageable illnesses into life-threatening crises when untreated. The 2023 documentary No Place to Heal chronicled the story of a man in Seattle whose untreated frostbite resulted in amputation. A chilling illustration of suffering without basic care. How can we allow such avoidable pain to continue? Malnutrition is another harsh reality. With no steady access to food, many homeless people survive on scraps or go hungry for days, weakening their bodies and inviting chronic illnesses such as anemia and diabetes. The lack of clean water and sanitation within encampments fosters outbreaks of infections like dysentery, which spread quickly in overcrowded, unhygienic spaces. These preventable illnesses not only devastate those living outdoors, but also pose risks to nearby communities, endangering public health. Tuberculosis, once nearly eradicated, is re-emerging within homeless populations, with new cases surfacing in cities like Los Angeles, threatening entire neighborhoods. Mental health challenges compound the crisis. The trauma of street life, constant danger, loneliness, and loss of dignity feeds anxiety, PTSD, and depression. Without regular access to therapy or medication, these mental health conditions worsen, trapping people in cycles of quiet despair. The 2024 documentary Minds on the Margins depicted a woman's struggle with untreated schizophrenia, her pleas ignored, as she wandered the streets. The neglect of such suffering stains our collective conscience. Hospitals carry the crushing weight of this health emergency. Emergency departments, often the only lifeline for unhoused individuals, are inundated with exposure-related illnesses, infections, and complications from malnutrition. The financial cost is immense. Annual healthcare spending for homeless individuals surpasses $100 billion, siphoning resources from broader public health priorities. This strain reverberates through society, stretching systems designed to support everyone. Why do we let preventable diseases sap our communities when early action could save lives? The health dimension of homelessness is more than an individual misfortune. It is a societal failure that wounds both those on the streets and the communities that look away. Security and social order consequences of homelessness. The homelessness crisis in America not only shatters the lives of those without shelter, but also generates significant challenges for public safety and community stability. As homelessness grows more desperate, many individuals, especially those struggling with fentanyl addiction, resort to petty theft, vandalism, or public disturbances to survive or sustain their habits. In densely populated homeless zones like Skid Row, police data indicate that such minor offenses are frequently tied to the need for essentials or the desperation of addiction. Yet it's essential to acknowledge that unhoused people are more often victims than perpetrators, enduring assaults, robberies, and exploitation in environments where safety is scarce. This intricate reality heightens tension within nearby communities. Residents living close to encampments often feel increased fear and frustration, perceiving a decline in neighborhood security and order. Encampments surrounded by discarded needles and trash intensify these fears, fostering a sense of disorder that erodes trust among neighbors. Balancing empathy for the homeless with the desire for secure, stable neighborhoods presents a difficult dilemma. The friction between housed residents and homeless populations is tangible, as misconceptions and mistrust deepen societal rifts. Police departments face mounting strain, with many officers devoting large portions of their shifts to homelessness-related incidents, from mental health emergencies to drug-related cases. In Seattle, for example, law enforcement reports allocating nearly 30% of their resources to these calls. This redirection of effort leaves other crimes less addressed, making communities feel overlooked. Moreover, heavy-handed policing tactics toward homeless populations, often driven by public pressure, can aggravate the situation. Rather than providing support, these approaches breed resentment and push individuals further to society's edges. The fentanyl epidemic magnifies this strain, creating concentrated crime zones that test both community tolerance and law enforcement capacity. Beyond single incidents, the societal fallout is profound, undermining the sense of shared order. Homeless encampments, though symptoms of systemic breakdown, become flashpoints for polarizing debates. Supporters of homeless rights clash with advocates for cleaner streets, intensifying community divisions. This divide, reflected in countless reports and discussions, reveals how homelessness fractures social bonds. The suffering of the unhoused mirrors the frustration of nearby residents, producing a shared sense of urgency that underscores the need for comprehensive solutions. Moral and cultural consequences. The homelessness crisis in America, intensified by the fentanyl epidemic, cuts to the core of our moral and cultural identity, exposing entrenched inequalities and confronting the ideals that shape our nation. With more than 580,000 individuals sleeping outdoors each night, according to HUD's 2023 report, we face an unsettling question. What does it say about a country that permits such widespread suffering to endure? The agony of homelessness goes beyond material deprivation. It robs people of their dignity, leaving them exposed not only to the brutality of the streets, but to the ethical shortcomings of a society that fails to safeguard them. This crisis is fueling a troubling cultural drift toward apathy and prejudice. Many perceive the homeless, especially those battling addiction, as threats rather than victims. A mindset born of fear, misinformation, and waning compassion. In trying to manage the overwhelming scale of the issue, society frequently turns to policies that hide homelessness from view, rather than addressing it meaningfully. This dehumanizing approach further alienates those who are suffering, replacing understanding with condemnation. Children who grow up witnessing this dynamic may internalize these biases entering adulthood in a culture where empathy is scarce and the homeless are treated as outsiders. The moral toll of homelessness is immense. It compels us to confront difficult questions about our collective responsibility and humanity. Are we participants in a system that lets countless lives slip through the cracks? The suffering of the homeless, particularly when entwined with addiction, challenges the American ideal of opportunity for all. It lays bare the divide between the nation's proclaimed values and its lived reality, exposing a sobering fact: the vision of a fair and inclusive society remains unfulfilled for many. This weakening of shared moral foundations frays the social fabric, leaving behind a fractured community where bonds are strained and compassion fades into the background. Long-term consequences for future generations. Homelessness in America casts a deep and lingering shadow that reaches far beyond the present moment, shaping the lives of future generations in powerful ways. Each year, nearly 1.5 million children experience homelessness, according to data from the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. These young lives, disrupted by instability, face daunting obstacles, interrupted schooling, exposure to trauma, and in some cases, early encounters with addiction. A documentary highlighting a homeless family in Chicago movingly depicts children trying to study in shelters while their parents confront addiction, revealing the emotional weight of this instability. The ripple effects of homelessness on these children often entrench a cycle of poverty that is extremely difficult to escape. Those raised in chaotic conditions are more likely to encounter unemployment, chronic health problems, and homelessness themselves as adults. This sustains systemic inequality, producing a generation burdened with inherited struggles. The fentanyl epidemic worsens these patterns as many young people encounter addiction in shelters or on the streets, normalizing substance use in their daily lives. This deepens the generational spiral of poverty and dependency. The long-term societal cost is immense, leaving a generation less equipped to contribute economically or civically, straining public systems even further. The gap between the wealthy and the poor widens as well. Ongoing homelessness and addiction breed resentment, eroding communal bonds. As neighborhoods grow desensitized to the suffering of the unhoused, empathy and shared responsibility wanes, setting the stage for a future where these values become increasingly rare. The hardship faced by today's homeless population should serve as a warning, urging decisive action before this crisis becomes the defining inheritance of the next generation. Personal perspective. After years of contemplating America's social struggles, the intertwined crises of homelessness and fentanyl stand out to me as a profound moral failure. The suffering of people living on the streets, deprived of basic safety and hope, is a wound that affects us all. I can still picture walking through San Francisco's Tenderloin district, where I encountered a young woman clutching a torn blanket, her eyes hollow from fentanyl's hold. What lingered wasn't only her pain, but the sobering realization that in a nation of wealth and opportunity, we've allowed such despair to flourish. Documentaries like The Invisible have illuminated these narratives while also serving as powerful indictments of our collective inaction. This crisis calls for far more than compassion. It demands responsibility. We can no longer turn a blind eye to the systemic breakdowns driving homelessness, soaring housing prices, insufficient mental health support, and a drug epidemic born of neglect. The fentanyl emergency in particular has escalated into a devastating tragedy, forcing communities to shoulder immense consequences. I believe the path forward lies in confronting root causes head-on, through affordable housing, accessible addiction treatment, and policies centered on dignity and care. The anguish of the homeless mirrors our shared moral compass. Will we avert our gaze or step up to heal this wound together? We possess the ability to rewrite the story, but it begins with recognizing the crisis and responding with urgency, empathy, and resolve. Conclusion. The suffering caused by homelessness in America, intensified by the fentanyl epidemic, calls for immediate and unwavering attention. The economic, cultural, and societal repercussions of this crisis ripple through every layer of our communities. Yet within this hardship lies a chance to respond with compassion, meaningful change, and a renewed dedication to justice. By investing in affordable housing, broadening access to addiction care, and nurturing empathy, we can build a future where no one is left to survive on the streets. This crisis is more than a problem. It is an appeal to restore dignity and hope to those most in need. May this documentary spark meaningful action, urging us to mend and transform together.